been like 50 different global awards given out to you guys. So it's that time of the year when we start winning. The hardest part is actually the submission process. It's very tedious. It's a real pain. So if you get through that, once you get through just submitting, the fun part is the winning. And so I just encourage you guys while you're here to enter the award shows. It really feels good to win, and you guys can all win. I mean, you're doing the work that wins, so. Anyway, let's get started. So tonight we have a grad, Sam Joseph, who's returning. So Sam is a strategist. He's also a writer. A lot of you guys, I mean, you're all strategic because you take strategy classes, but what I found over the years is that strategists are usually really good writers, and writers are often very good strategists. Sam has worked at Digitas in Boston, Sapient Nitro in Sapient Nitro in Miami, People, Ideas, and Culture in New York, Jack Morton, New York, Analog Folk, and now he started his own company, his own agency called TBD Labs in New York. Welcome. Thank you. Yeah, nice to see you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I haven't used one of these since my brother's wedding, so if I'm not good at using the microphone, humor me and pretend I'm doing a good job with it. Looks like I'm going to still get notifications. Sorry about that. Cool. Thanks for having me. So first, just so that everyone gets what, hopefully they were hoping to get. I figure you have to do something really cute, then do someone who's really hip happening right now. And then I think some grandmas doing some crazy stuff is always, you really can't lose with that. Cool, so who am I? Jared just told you, so that kind of jumps ahead a little bit here, but one thing I just want to talk about to kind of kick off here is, the key to any successful pitch or job interview, because I know that's on everyone's mind that is here. It's not your creds or it's your bio. The key is solving their problem with your skills. So how to structure any good pitch, presentation, if you're getting interviewed somewhere, is to think about it in 3 terms. Show how the world has changed, show how it is creating winners and losers, and show them how your skills will help them succeed. So what does that mean by show how the world has changed? So what's good about this is you may look at a brand and they're just doing a terrible job, and you could just say that to them, and then they're going to be saying, oh, well, that's really rude of you, and there's a million reasons why we're not doing a good job. But when you shift it around to the world is changing, it shifts the blame off them and shifts it more onto larger cultural trends and economic trends. So here's just 2 examples here. People don't need cars as much as they used to. People prefer subscribing to purchasing. And what's happening is then you want to layer in some proof points here. You want to show how this is already happening out there, and there's evidence of it. It's not just your opinion. So the first one here, Amazon's winning. They're delivering anything you want, whenever you want it. And Sears is losing. They're not doing, their retail business model of showing up to purchasing isn't, as strong as it used to because of this context. And then you look about the people prefer subscribing or purchasing. Is this too close? Should I be like this far? Is this good? Dollar Shave Club won and Gillette lost just a tiny bit. Gillette's still pretty big, but they had to pay to buy Dollar Shave Club, so it was a little bit of a loss. And then how your skills will help them succeed. So let's say you were going in there, and these are just examples. You could sell them anything you want, but let's say you were going in there to sell them delivery partnerships. This is a way that now whoever your client is that you're pitching to, this is what you can deliver to them to help them, win here. And then the subscriber data tracking, just another example. It could be anything in this instance. So what's my pitch to you? And why you guys, besides the fact that you have to be here, to be interested and listen to me here a little bit. So the first one is, the world has changed. There's numerous skill sets and numerous types of agencies that make up advertising now. This really isn't news, I think, to anyone here, but it's even more true out there. The way each agency operates is not just one way an agency operates, not just a traditional way for traditional agencies, a digital way for digital agencies, and same true for experiential. There's just so many different ways of doing things right now, and how you apply your skill sets is critical. It's crazy winners and losers because, kind of for better or worse, you'd be surprised how quickly you can get pigeonholed to be a car guy who works, on cars their entire life. A Cincinnati CPGer where you're just doing focus groups about, P&G and everything else. You get pigeonholed in that. You also get really comfortable doing it, and you're like, well, I don't love it, but I've been doing it for 5 years now, and why would I want to change? So that happens really fast. So really, the successful people in here know what they're good at, what they want to work on, and where they want to do it as soon as possible. It's a very tricky thing to do. It's hard work because a lot of you guys here are just learning all the different things that you can be doing. But the faster you can do it, the better. So just add a little more context of why I think I can help you a little bit succeed. A lot of this is going to be on you guys and the things you do with your life. But just to kind of summarize a little bit more of what Jared was saying, is I've worked across a lot of different places at this point. I've worked at traditional, digital, experiential agencies. I've worked at small startups. I've worked at big companies, holding companies that are owned by them, independents. I'm now freelancing as well as running my own agency. And I taught at Miami Ad School, and I went to Miami Ad School. So I have a lot of different experience. And I'm thinking, hopefully, that talking about content experiences today with you guys, then talking about why I think there's something really interesting in there, can help you get to where you want to go a little bit quicker. And if you have any questions for me about anything in this industry, I'm happy to give you my honest opinion. And I hope that makes up for a little bit that I'm not coming from Wyden or Mother, which I'm sure everyone would be more excited if that was true, but I didn't. So that's kind of my background here. So just a quick gift break before we get into some more content and experiences. You can't lose with that. Post Malone, he's having a moment, His album just came out. And then more grandmas, because why not? I think this was a subconscious thing from being back in Miami and, retirement living down here. Okay, cool, fun times. Experiences and content can mean two totally different things. And I think this is important to just make the distinction about, because when you go out there and you start to you interview for something, or you go to an agency and they're like, oh, we do experiences and content, or your role is going to be experience designer. It can mean completely two totally different things. And when you have these conversations, it's really important to be smart about what you're talking about. So one kind of thing that I always do, and I'm going to interject some little pieces of advice that I found useful over the years, and in this crazy industry, is think about things in terms of deliverables. In other words, what do you need to put in front of the client to sell work through? Starting from there makes for a better brief. So people are always asking, you'll get a brief like, oh, we need to increase brand lift by 20%. That's fine, but okay, who are the clients? What do they respond to? Do we need to build a deck with 30 ideas, or are they really looking for a bunch of print ads. Is this even a real like creative opportunity? Always work back from deliverables is something I would really, really recommend now and for the rest of your careers. So another side note about sample deliverables. I just wanted to put this in here because I think it's just really good advice. If you're a designer or a copywriter and you go out there and you're junior, you're going to get some shit work where you have to format decks and you have to do some proofing on decks. And it's not the fun, exciting stuff you guys get to do here. We're coming up with ideas. You're not going to do that all the time, but it's going to happen. But really, they're really amazing learning opportunities. And if you can, because you probably didn't work on it, is ask what was the brief that kicked this project off, or what was the RFP that kicked this project off. Because now you get to see what they're delivering to the client while skipping all of the bullshit. You're skipping the meetings, the emails, the brainstorms, everything. And yeah, you're just going through it and you're making sure everything looks beautiful and the template is great, but it's a great learning experience. So I do say embrace it. I mean, no one wants to do it. It's not fun work, but it's a really great opportunity to learn. Okay, so what deliverables are we talking about today? So like I said, there's kind of two ways to look at this in terms of experience and design, or experience and content. So experience design, this is more of a UX, UI discipline. I know you guys probably know some of this stuff. Maybe one person doesn't, so it's great for them, and maybe half. But experience design, we're talking UX, UI disciplines, making digital products with a heavy emphasis on wireframes, user testing, and development. In this instance, when you're talking about content, it is less of like, it is not the fun social, videos that we're putting out there. This is everything you see within a digital product. And by that I mean an app, a website. You're talking about navigation, you're talking about the media, you're talking about the words. It is really nitty-gritty stuff. And it also includes how often it's updated. And here the production is really digital. So these are really just terrible, crude examples. But I just wanted to show them just because, and I'm sure you guys are learning about this in other ways. But like it's a content style guide, information architecture. I'm not an expert in this. I know enough about it to talk about in a room, like most things. And then wireframes, as people are familiar with. And then this is I think the worst image you could probably put for design and development for what it is. It's like just lazy. But so here's the other two. Number two, the other way of looking at this, and this is more experiential marketing. It's advertisers making in-person marketing with a heavy emphasis on events, installations, retail, and physical demos. Content in this instance means what is being written about or filmed about the activation of typical brand channels. So you would have it out there, you put it on the website, you would put it on social. And here the production is mainly physical. You do have some video production often, and then filming it and making sure everything works great. But this one is much more out there, kind of more of an experiential marketing world. A few examples here of things that I think are really cool that I wish I had done. Ben & Jerry's created a giant crane to dip people into ice cream. It's hard to see here, but here's the guy, and then someone over here controlling him, and they dipping him into the ice cream. Pretty fun. One nice thing I thought was cool was that the person behind you controls you. So if you were like the last of your friend to go, or you're just doing it by yourself, you would have a complete stranger dropping you into the ice cream, which seemed kind of, I don't know, I always thought that was interesting. Refinery 29 created this kind of immersive experience called 29 Rooms. I have a short video about this. Just because it kind of shows the full scope of it, which I think is pretty nifty. So I'm going to play it.
is Alexa Mead. Welcome to my installation at 29 Room. In my artwork, I make three-dimensional spaces appear to be two-dimensional.
Just kind of throwing their arms up in glee like they've won Price is Right and like run through the experience.
Cool. So that's one of them I wanted to show. This one just happened this past year, a few months. It's a shorter video. Nike did it because they have huge budgets. But it's also pretty fun. So it's pretty clear, but just in case it's not, their animated video version is responding to them on the treadmill. So they get a little video game character of themselves that reacts as based on what they're doing. Cool. This is a great one that I always use for reference. It's a few years old, but I think it's a really good example. Everyone's always seen it.
All of them.
Look at this. We're safe. You drink, we drive. Place straw and hold and blow here for a ride on us. All right, let's try it out.
Ready, set, blow.
Keep it going. Blow, blow, blow.
How drunk are you? Analyzing data? Good, my favorite.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Finding pickup location.
Requesting driver, that's exactly. Look, it's here.
I guess I'm not driving anymore.
Is that an Uber? A free Uber? I flew over. Thanks, Uber. Never drink and drive, folks.
So yeah, fun idea. I'll talk a little bit more later on, but the tech behind that is, actually pretty basic. Like the hardware used to build something like that is, don't quote me on it, but like less than $100. It probably costs more, quite frankly, to build this outside structure to make it look really nice than the actual process of having something at a breathalyzer that connects to something else that sends a notification to someone, just because I'm sure the Ubers were sitting around the corner, but either way. Last one here, just a fun one. Rampage used a giant controller to play a video game. Kind of another fun, in-person experience. So again, design, content, or experiencing content can mean kind of two different things. I like number two more, so that's what we're going to talk about. That's what TBD Labs is all about. and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we why I came about starting it, and what to do so you guys can do this yourself down the road. So why? People want experiences more than ever. It's only growing. You've probably seen this data point a bunch of times. Excuse me for using millennials as a terminology. It's always kind of lazy consumer, target. But this is a data point, and I didn't do the study, so I got to use it. So 3 out of 4 millennials would choose to spend their money on experiences rather than buying something desirable. That just speaks to the growth in it. You could probably look around the room, and you probably all agree that you like spending money on experiences. The other thing is most content simply doesn't work. This is like my super pet peeve with this industry. This point right here is pretty stunning. Just 5% of branded content garners 9% of total consumer engagements. But yet, you go in any agency or you get briefs here and you're working on things, it's always content, content, content. Let's make some videos. I could talk a lot about why that happens from terms of, social networks wanting you to make those videos so that they'll promote them. And also just because a lot of agencies are used to making videos, so that's what makes it kind of just easier to keep doing what you're doing. And I kind of mentioned that later on. Anyways, so there's 2 things here. We kind of have this good thing, this demand for experiences, and then we have these bad thing with the surplus of content. But if we're able to leverage this demand for experiences and create some type of interesting piece of content out of that, then we're able to cut through this surplus of content. And going back to some of the examples I put before, which seemed, they're fun and cute, but quite frankly, they're really effective. The Uber stunt got 55 million earned media impressions. Refinery 29's 29 Rooms is absolutely killing it. They had 1 billion earned media impressions. They expanded the next year in New York. Now they're expanding into multiple cities. It is just absolutely tearing it up. So that stuff works. Why anyone really care about these is an important question that I think it can kind of be kind of summarized again in a couple GIFs. So that's one. And then this one. So hopefully someone out there found that was interesting and smiled to it. Now, if I had captured your genuine excitement or just surprise in that and had that on camera, that is always compelling. That's why America's Home Videos was on the air for X amount of years. When you're capturing just regular people going through their life and they engage with one of these awesome experiences and you're able to capture that on film, that's what really makes really compelling content. So that's really one thing to think about when you are, pitching something like this or creating something like this. Is again, think back from deliverables. What is the video that's coming out of this? What is that peak moment where I'm going to get some type of surprising moment where you get people saying, "Oh wow," and then you get their faces. There's another great WestJet thing that's like, 4 years old now, where they surprise all these kids with like Christmas gifts at the airport, and they ask them what they want for Christmas, and then like a little virtual Santa. They take off on the airplanes, and when they land, what's waiting for them are all the gifts they asked for. And you got all these kids smiling, parents are smiling, everyone's happy. It's a great video. There's no denying it. You can watch that, and you probably need to have like no soul to not like respond and be like, "Oh, that's nice." Again, and I could have done this disclaimer in the beginning. This isn't the only way to do anything. This is just one way of doing things. But I think it's a pretty cool opportunity to do things this way. So to get those expressions, you need truly novel experiences. And one way of doing that is to leverage creative technology. What is creative technology? I know you guys have a couple classes, I think, in some of the international locations. Hopefully you guys have some classes on it and you guys are learning about it. But I'm positive you don't know what it is because no one really knows what it is. The last 2 years, I've been running this State of Creative Technology survey where I've asked 40 plus CTs, creative technologists, what all these different questions, and it's been really enlightening and learning about them. And there's a real, not really pure or consensus on what it is. Is there a future for creative technologists? Will it just become creatives who know technology, or will it actually be a bigger need for someone who has a top level understanding of all types of technology, even if they aren't actually developers or experts in building things out? I can certainly share this link and the whole presentation if you want it. And here's another side note for everyone here. Getting back into the type of career advice portion. Let's say you really want to work on a coffee brand, but your clients are Bank of America and P&G or whatever it is. Go create something, out there in your own free time. And I'm sure other people give you this advice. But, go out there, create a coffee IG account, try to figure out your own unique coffee blend, get some expertise at cold brewing. Because when that opportunity does show up and it does present itself, everyone who's applying for that job is going to say, I love coffee. But you need to have the proof points. And you can show it something like, I just spent 2 years doing this. And it wasn't like you are obsessed over it, but you did it when you could do it. And that's essentially what I'm doing here. The brutal truth here is so much of this stuff, I have no idea how to build. I'm not a developer. I'm not a coder. I just have always been found creative technologists really interesting. I find that they have appreciation for someone like my skill set, which is more creative and more strategic, and helping them come up with ideas and helping them sell the ideas. And what I've been able to do is just shown an interest, and that interest over time, starting back from when I worked at Jack Morgan, which was an experiential shop, onward, I've been able to kind of learn more about this, even though when it comes down to it, I don't have any credentials or ability to code anything. I went backwards, it confused me. Okay, so what is creative technology? I think it's simply technology used for brand communications. It's not a certain, 5 or 6 things. I think it is that broad, quite frankly. I think it's all about the context of what you're using to deliver. What's interesting about creative technology at this point, in time, is that we're really at an inflection point where this technology is becoming more accessible while still being novel. Single boards, microcontrollers, and sensors are cheaper, smaller, more accessible than they've ever been. What does that really mean? Pull this up real quick. This video is a bit dry, but it's short, and I just think it's worth sharing, so I'm gonna share it. Are you okay with that?
Read for my Enough Already project, which listens to the closed captioning.
Whoa! Went full screen and reset it. I don't appreciate that.
Track from the TV and would mute the TV whenever someone was mentioned that I.
What he just said, so basically he just talks in the beginning, he's like, oh, you want to know what an Arduino is, which is a little microcomputer, like this big. They're getting smaller. They're going to be like this big any day. And you can put them in anything, whatever you want to do. And what he was just saying to kick this off was he created a script that read closed captions, and whenever the TV mentioned something, a person's name, probably guess what name it was, it would mute the TV. So it's just a nice example, and here's a couple more examples to show you the type of stuff you can do with
Didn't
this.
want to hear about. Here are a few other ideas of cool things you can do with the Arduino. Randy Serafan created the lunchtime clock, which speeds up slightly right before noon, slows down between 12 and 1, and then speeds up again, giving you 12 extra minutes of lunch every day. Steve Hofer's Secret Knock gumball machine was featured in Make Volume 25. It's a lot like a regular gumball machine, except that instead of a quarter, you need to know the secret knock to get a gumball out. The Arduino also lets you take your projects online. Even your cat can start tweeting with the Kitty Twitty project from Mark DeVink. When your cat plays with a little toy, the device tweets. The project can be found in Make Volume 22. And who doesn't love a robot? Arduino can help you make your own. It acts like the brains of your bot. But what if you want to use your brain to control the bot? Check out this mind-controlled Arduino robot from Tero and Kimmo Karvinen. It can be found in our book, Arduino Bots and Gadgets. So that's just a small sample of what you can do with an Arduino.
Yeah, this guy's the man. I was going to show this later. Yeah, I will show it later. Stick to the plan, Sam. A couple other things. NFC voice wearables, more widespread than they've ever been. These things are all getting to people's homes. NFC's finally in Apple iOS, and they're finally pushing it. Other types of wearables. Wearables have been around for a little bit longer, but there's a great chart. It's called Gartner's Hype Cycle of Technology. I should have put it in here, but basically it just talks about imagining a giant, I guess, I don't know if we consider that an S-curve or not, but it goes up, comes down, and then it plateaus. And basically what it's saying is that at this point up here is the hype of expectations, where everyone gets really excited about technology, but it doesn't do anything. It's not really fleshed out yet. And then people kind of get disillusioned with it, and they kind of like, oh, it's not cool because, it didn't live up to the expectations. But then it gets up to here, and then it actually works. And it's really effective. The technology works, and people know how to use it. So you mentioned some things like, NFC. Oh, we've been talking about NFC for years. Yeah, we have been talking about NFC for years, which is near field communications. But now, when you get someone like Apple, who is in everybody's possession here, start to actually get behind it, now you can get out of this, I think they call it like trough of disillusionment. It's really dramatic. But start getting adapted. So there's always opportunities out there to use technology, even if it isn't, even if it feels like it's been around forever. Like AR, like when I started in this industry, everyone was talking about AR, but then anything you could never do anything cool with it. I mean, you could take a print ad and make it dance, and it was kind of useless. But now AR is going to be built into phones, and there's going to be AR browsers. Now there's actual opportunities there. And then robotics and fabrication is becoming more affordable. Should be R, more affordable. I would say VR, AR, AI, they all fall into this category, but quite frankly, I break them out into their own things because they're way too complicated. They're different skill sets. They deserve their own attention. And really, those type of fields, you're getting much more into, actual, like VR, you're getting much more into film production, just with the new medium. In AR, a little more still development. And AI is incredibly complex. I'm not going to pretend that I know it. So to recap, consumers want experiences. Creative technology enables novel experiences, and novel experiences create content that gets seen. This really isn't as important to you guys, but I think it's kind of a nice side note and kind of explains a little bit of why I think this is kind of an interesting space in the industry. Agencies are just slow to adapt because they are what they make. This was a lesson that took me a long time to learn. So happy to give it to you guys now. Every place I ever worked at, and I legit every single place that says they were changing. A little bit that's just because the last 10 years was just like a digital revolution or whatever you want to, call it. But some did a little bit, but for the most part, those were always just dreams. It's always easier to sell what you have already made because you have the creds and you have the people. It's efficient. It's economy of scales. You may come across a digital shop when you're out there, and they primarily make websites, but have made some video content and a commercial too, and they're like, oh, we're really getting into traditional. That's nice. They make websites. Come back in 5 years to them if you want, and maybe they'll be doing that, but I don't think they will be. You can come across a traditional shop that primarily makes TV spots, and they do some websites and a social campaign or two. That's nice, but they make TV. And that's not a knock on either of those things. What I'm trying to point out is really for you guys, don't be smart. Don't buy the dream. Look at what is actually paying the bills for them and be excited about that work. Because in my experience, change is very hard. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So when it comes to creative technology, very, very few agencies specialize in it. And kind of rightfully so. It's hard to scale. It's not their core knowledge. Again, easier not to change. They hire these creative technologists and have no clue what to do with them. So what I'm trying to hope to do with TV Labs is try to get kind of in this little gap area where we can kind of spot in, get in there, build stuff, and get out. So enough biz. That's just like a sales pitch there. How do you come up with these experiences using creative technology? So hopefully this gives you some practical skills and kind of an approach to how to use some of these things, because it can feel a little bit foreign sometimes when you're trying to sort these things out. It all comes back to Toast. It doesn't. Just want to give you guys some more gifts. And then Cardi B, another, having her moment. Love Cardi B. And then Grandma's doing Fireball. It doesn't really get old, does it? Okay, so first and foremost, think back from deliverables. So these ideas that we kind of showed before, the ones that I liked, they did two things. They created in-person impact, and they created digital content. Ideally, you do both, but that's not always necessary. First, think about the brand objectives. If you have something where you have this exclusive in-person experience, where you're just trying to make a small group of people, and by what I mean small, it could still be a couple thousands, but you're not trying to, reach 1 million people. Think more luxury consumers. Think about those experiences where you're trying to have like this top-notch party where something really awesome happens, and where you can build some type of cool installation. You can have some type of live music that has projection that react to it. That can exist just as its own thing. Now, if you're trying to be more inclusive, and it's more about the content, you can think more about CPG consumers. This is about getting that piece of content that will scale, that will get out there, that people will want to see. Again, you could do something like this with, 100 people at a party or something. But you could also do this with like 5 people. It could be something you set up some cool installation on the street, and people interact with it, and you get their genuine surprise, turn it into a piece of content, and get it out there. So here's kind of the bread and butter in how you should go about if you want to kind of concept these things. Each activation has 2 components, a trigger and output. For a trigger, it can be a cloud-based interaction, and the output can be a real-world experience. So when I say a cloud-based interaction, that's essentially saying anything digital. Is something happening in a social media feed? Is someone sending a text? And the output is a real-world experience. Something happens because of that. And I have some examples to kind of hit that home a little bit. And the other one is a real-world interaction, something where you can actually play around with, and that creates the cloud-based experience. Again, this is essentially physical to digital, but I don't like using that word because digital physical is just as relevant. But that was a big term that was used for quite a while, and some people understand it that way more. So talking about this, the trigger that's a real-world interaction, the output's a cloud-based experience. Go back to the Nike example, right? The real-world interaction was people jumping on the treadmill, running, and then the output was the video reacted to that. It was in line with that. For the Uber example, people blew their boozy breath into the kiosk, and that ordered an Uber. That was a cloud-based experience that came out of it. A couple ones that I didn't show the examples, but I can just speak to them, and they're pretty big ones that you may have seen. So here's a cloud-based interaction with the output being a real-world experience. IBM Watson did a dress for the Met Gala 4 years ago or 5 years ago, whatever it is, and it lit up based on positive tweets about the dress. So here you have something happening out in the social world, and that is coming to life in the physical space. The remote-controlled tourist, this had online controls that had that directed a real person in real life to go do things. I think I won a bunch of awards. But here's just another example of how you think about triggers and outputs. So when it comes down to it, there's countless triggers you could use. Going back to Arduino, sensors, all these things, and how small technology is getting, how cheap it's getting. Every year they announce another smaller micro little computer that you can put into anything. Just think about the things that are out there that you can play around with. So when we say trigger, it really is just about anything. It's opening a box, taking a business card, pulling in temperature data, lifting a bottle, dancing at a concert. It could be anything. Like, this is just a handful of things. The key is to think about your brief and think about the journey that's out there, and think through the journey and think about all the different triggers. So let's say you just happen to have a brief that was about a woman's hair brand to activate at a music festival. I have a feeling some of you guys do have that brief, I was told. So what can be the triggers? Consider the journey and the moments. This is often a strategist ask to create this consumer journey. But really, journeys can be super complex, can be super useful to be that complex. But whatever was found useful for more conceptual work is just thinking about it from a very high level. Just thinking, okay, here's the festival. Let's just walk through the day. Okay, we go here, we're getting ready at home, and everything that's relevant here to a hair product. So we're getting ready at home, and then we're driving there, we're probably fixing our hair again, and then what are the things happening? It doesn't have to just be the hair. We're walking around, finding where we're going, all these different things. And when you have those moments kind of mapped out, you don't have to do it in a very fancy way at all. You could just do it on a whiteboard. You kind of take a step back and you say, okay, here's all the things that we could activate. Okay, when the beat drops at a huge performance at the festival, that's a huge moment. What could happen? Using a hairspray bottle, you take it out of your purse and use it. What could that trigger? sweating, just dancing, and these basic things that are going to be happening anyways. Those can all create some type of interesting output. It's 550. Sorry. So then consider the outputs. First, I'm almost done, so people have things to do. Then consider the outputs. First, haptic outputs. So these are just like, I wouldn't even call them ideas. They're just things I threw up here just to kind of just connect the dots here a little bit. So imagine you have, when the beat drops, everyone has these flower crowns that can vibrate and mimic the bass. So no matter where you are in the grounds, you're kind of as if you're at the main part where the beat is dropping. So haptic is basically just physical touch. It gives you like feedback whenever you're touching something. Robotic outputs. You could have a fun little installation where you use a hairspray bottle, and that results in a giant hairspray bottle spraying water all over a ton of people. Why not? I think it'll get some buzz. Audio outputs. This one really isn't an audio output, but whatever. Dancing, it could, the amount on which people dance, you could have a series of fans that go up or down based on how people are dancing. Maybe they reach a certain point of so much excitement, and all these fans do stuff. Again, it goes back to people's hair. And then the visual outputs. Yeah, I think I screwed up all these headings. But anyways, how you are... Yeah. Anyways, you get the idea. So a visual output, what are some visual things that could happen? Again, this goes back to kind of the, you could do some type of hair clip that lights up. You could do it based on physical, effort, how much you are sweating, and it shows you how engaged you are, and that can then kind of just be an indication. This was something kind of similar that we pitched for TV Labs for our client, just trying to show how emotionally engaged you are with the music. You would have a different indicator, and that you could be able to visually see that. So, just kind of like a recap here. How the world has changed. People want more experiences. It's going to create winners and losers. Brands like Refinery 29 and Ben & Jerry's are using create technology to create novel experiences. At the same time, most brands are comfortable doing what they're doing. And that's not to say they're wrong. TV isn't dying. Radio isn't dying. There's always going to be a place for all these media channels. But how can you ensure your clients are successful and your work's successful and you make great creative work? Is think in terms of triggers and outputs to create and capture genuine emotional reactions. So yeah, that is a lot of time. Whoa.
Questions?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. So for an activation at a festival, what would you say is like the ideal turnover time from the moment someone enters, like your tent or whatever it is, to the time that they exit?
Oh, I don't know if I can answer that. I think it all depends. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess it comes down to really what do they need to learn, you kind of work backwards from what is the brand, I mean, not just the brand objective, but like if you're selling a car, you probably need someone to stick around for longer. If you're trying to sell CPG or a hairspray, and you're just trying to get them to learn like one thing, it doesn't have to be that long. I think longer is always better though. But you always have to be realistic about the venue, because if it's a festival and people have more free time to kind of like linger around and they have downtime, then yeah, you would probably have loftier goals and try to get people to stick around. But if it's something that's like, just like a one concert and we're just talking about music, but it's on the mind, and it was just like a 2,000 people show, and they're just kind of getting there and going, you probably have to have turnover pretty fast. With all that said, though, what's the objective, right? Are you really want to deliver some type of like immersive experience that people hang around in a long time because they're high value customers, or are you just trying to get a few really genuine, great reactions for content, and then you could have just a handful of people do it. So yeah, it kind of all depends.
Thanks.
Hi. What do you think is probably the biggest mistake brands are doing when it comes to experiential and activations?
Oh, the biggest mistake they're doing. To be honest, so many of them don't do it. It's probably the biggest mistake. It's hard to me to think of any brand that couldn't do something. I think, one thing that is tricky. Sorry, I lost my wife texted me.
So it's a good sign that no one has royally messed up yet.
No, yeah, one thing that I'm working with Live Nation now, and they're like, you can't just drop in, and it's really inauthentic, which is fair. It's just like throwing your sponsorship, like Sprite brought you whoever, and it's like people don't care. It's like I was probably gonna go to the concert anyways, but they're not investing the time to do something that's immersive and fun and cool, that lives up to the brand, but also gives some type of authentic experience back to people. That's probably a big problem. It's kind of like a classic thing that people do with just, and I wouldn't really consider it's like this world of sponsorship and then experiential, and people just always just do the sponsorship stuff. They just throw the money, and we sponsored the Red Sox or the Miami Heat, and then they don't do anything experiential. So I think that's kind of if they start to get into that world, it's just getting into it and then starting to make sure that they get the value out of it and do something besides just putting up a little stand where they give out free stuff.
Thank you.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
All right, so my question is, if you could put a number on it, let's say if you did put a number on it, what percentage of an experiential campaign would you have as far as informational? So when they come into this pop-up, what percentage of it would you actually have informing the visitors about the product or whatever it may be?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Again, it comes down to the objectives and how complicated your product is. So again, the automotive ones, because they do a lot of experiential. You want to get those people to sit in the car. That's always just the main goal of any automotive thing. You get butts to seats. It's super impactful, and you want to explain all those things. So then you're talking a big shift. But then, maybe it's something that's really easy to explain. Like gum. It's Wrigley's. It's fresh breath. It's you can probably explain that pretty quick. Have someone walk into some igloo or something that's freezing. Something cool happens, and they'll get it pretty quickly. It's kind of the tagline part of it. So it's hard to say. I think it comes down to, how much information do people need to understand, and then work backwards from that.
I have a question. in Miami, we just had the Museum of Ice Cream. How do you compare that type of activation with what you showed? Like, your thoughts, like, are those more the future? Do you think more of those will do it? Do you think they'll partner with brands? Like, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think those things are great, and I don't think that wasn't sponsored by a brand, right? That was just did it. And you look at that thing, and it's like, why couldn't a brand have done that? You know, like, and I think those things are. I think there's a bright future for them. Just look at 29 Rooms by Refinery 29. They're proof point to it. You know, it's going to be at this rate in a couple of years, everyone's going to be like putting them on this pedestal of like being amazing marketers, which they are kind of in their world, understanding the consumers. So yeah, I think those things are really exciting. And what's nice about things like that, and it's funny because you go back to thinking about production, the longer you stay in this industry, it's like, what's it cost to make it? You can balance those things with some like really cool creative technology things, but also some really basic things that you can kind of take photos in front of that are a little bit more kind of simpler and cheaper to pull off. So yeah, no, I think those things are, I think they're awesome. And something that, it's just funny, is like so much of the world out there just thinks so much in terms of, content, TV, print, everything else still, or websites. And to get people into